Okay, so do you agree with Aristotle that you have a telos, that you have some potential that you could actualize by orienting yourself towards the goods of life with the proper values and attitudes, virtues, and that you could pursue these goods of life effectively enough to attain the things that you need to attain to flourish and be the best you have the potential to be? Because if so, you might be a virtue ethicist, okay? But you also might be sitting there saying to yourself, okay, fine, I get it. I want to be a good person. I want to be good at being a person, Aristotle. But how do I do that? If it's that simple, you're talking a lot of talk here. If I have this potential in me, how do I realize this potential? If I knew how to do it, I would have already done it. How do I attain my telos? How do I actualize my telos? And Aristotle would say, okay, look, the first thing you have to do is you have to reorient yourself. And remember that we don't become by waiting for something to happen. We become by doing things. And this is one of the features of Aristotle's virtue ethics that makes it very different from all of the other ethical approaches we've looked at. For Aristotle, the question isn't primarily, what should I do? The question is rather, what should I be, or who should I be, and how do I become that kind of person that I think is my best self? How do I become the kind of person that naturally wants to do the kinds of things that should be done? And Aristotle's answer is this. By practicing virtue, we learn it. Just as the builder learns to build, we become just by doing just acts, temperate by temperate acts. So for Aristotle, the idea here is that if we practice the virtues, that we will come to embody them. We're sort of under construction, right? We're in the process of becoming. And our goal is to become the kind of person who is naturally inclined to do the things that ought to be done. And we become that kind of person by practicing the virtues, by deliberately practicing doing the things that might not at first come naturally, but that we want to have come naturally. We just kind of force ourselves to do them. And in this quote here, Aristotle lays out this point pretty clearly. It's clear that he who acts must have knowledge, he must choose his act, and his act must proceed from his character. So just actions are those that a just man does. So what Aristotle's saying here is that if you practice these virtues and you think of your life as and your being as something that's under construction and in the process, and you kind of fake it till you make it, eventually you'll become the kind of person who is naturally inclined to do the kinds of things that may be difficult for you to initially do, but that you will come to do naturally. Okay, there'll be expressions of your character because you will have built the kind of character that does the kinds of things that you think good people do. Now, there's an assumption here, right? The assumption is that you can become good by doing good. Is that a fair assumption? Does performing a good action contribute to you becoming a good person? Does it contribute to you becoming a good person? To become courageous, do I have to do courageous things? To become a good friend, do I have to behave like a good friend? Does performing good actions make a good person? And I'm imagining that to all of these questions, you're saying, well, no, not necessarily. I can think of plenty of examples where somebody does something good for a really lousy motivation, and it doesn't have any impact on their character whatsoever. This is why it's sort of questionable when judges sentence people who beat their spouses to volunteer their time in women's shelters. Or years ago when Michael Vick was convicted of animal cruelty, they assigned him, he had to volunteer in an animal shelter. And the thinking was, well, gosh, if we expose you to this suffering and put you in this position where you have to make decisions that look like they're compassionate, caring ones, you'll become a more compassionate, caring person. Is that really true? What if the person doesn't want to be a good person? They're just performing the good actions. Is that going to make them a good person? Because it seems like if a person wants to become a good person and a person performs the action that good people perform, that even if they're faking it initially, if they really want to become a good person, then maybe over time they do. Okay? So Aristotle looks at us and he says, you've got to start doing the things that good people do because you want to be a good person. And I know that it might not come naturally to you at first. And you're looking at Aristotle and you're saying, okay, I recognize it. I'm not a good person, but I really want to be, but I don't know how to be. What do I do? And Aristotle says, well, just do what good people do. And eventually, if you really want to be a good person, you'll become a good person. Okay, what he wrote was, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Okay, this idea of habit is very important to Aristotle. You do things enough time, it becomes habitual. You do things enough time for the right reasons, and they become part of your character. So that you'll become the kind of person over time that you want to be if you just kind of fake it till you make it. And what Aristotle would do is say, look, if you don't know what a good person is, or you don't know how to be a good person, identify somebody that you think is a good person. Kind of the what would Jesus do, what would Gandhi do type thing. And you live as that person would because you want to be that type of person. And eventually, if you practice hard enough and you embrace the virtues enough, you will become that kind of person. But of course, there's sort of a little bit of circularity here, right? What is a good person? A good person is the person that does the good things for the right reasons. Well, what are the good things? The things the good person does. Well, what's a good person? A person that does good things. And it kind of goes in this loop-de-loop here. And that might be one of the criticisms that we make of Aristotle's virtue ethics, is it seems to kind of put us back into this very subjective realm where we're choosing who we think embodies the virtues the best and what virtues we think are worthy of being embraced. And we start to lose some of that sort of objective criteria that we might have seen in Kantianism, utilitarianism, or egoism. So if you believe in this idea, though, that you can fake it till you make it with the right motivation, then maybe virtue ethics is for you. You just have to now pick your role model.